All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the next From Seed to Sky conversations on roots, resilience, and rising. And I am thrilled to welcome Rebecca Bloom, who I've known for many years, to this conversation today. And so just a brief introduction of Rebecca. She is a licensed mental health counselor specializing in adults with complex post-traumatic stress in South Seattle. She combines traditional talk, art, and somatic-based therapy methods. She's a white, cis, Jewish, queer woman living with hidden disabilities. She pioneered the first 6-hour continuing education class for mental health clinicians on menopause, which is now offered several times a year. She co-created with Drea Bloom the Therapist Who Tarot deck. She's a monthly guest on the internationally loved podcast, Psychology in Seattle. Her Rebecca Sodes are known for looking at issues in counseling through a feminist lens with humor, honesty, and respect. She's trained in level 2 of sensory motor psychotherapy and is currently working towards a certification in sex therapy, having attended the 90-hour CIIS postgraduate program. For 8 years, she taught in Antioch, Seattle's Masters in Art Therapy program. For fun, she watercolors, collages from vintage ephemera, and makes borscht from scratch.
Yes.
Welcome. So glad you're here.
Yeah. I had to
And
switch into my computer glasses. I always forget. I'm like, why can't I see? Like,
no,
all
sometimes
right.
I've got like glasses under here on my forehead.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't find them. I know, middle age, here it is. It's so,
It's I now have a set of these glasses at every place I could possibly use a computer. Um,
yeah, yeah, I will be following in your footsteps. Right now, it's just like either here or there. And then I'm like, where are they?
yeah.
So, one way that I like to start with is what one daily practice that strengthens your roots, nurtures your resilience, or
Mm.
helps you rise in the face of the inevitable challenges that you might be facing individually, collectively, interpersonally,
Yeah.
all the ways.
Yeah. I don't have a dishwasher, so it's doing my dishes.
Mm,
And my house is tiny, so there's nowhere to hide them. So, yeah, if I don't like what's going on over there, I just have to take care of it. And then I have a super old fashioned um, enamel double sink, and there's this whole process. Like, I just have to get this clean. So I would say that's my daily practice, both necessary and it has to become spiritual because otherwise I'd just be annoyed.
yeah. I love how we can also make like these very kind of practical things that we're gonna do anyway into
Hmm.
these spiritual practices or into these moments of presence.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we get things done at the same time.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I love that because yeah, as a yoga therapist, sometimes people are like, okay, well now I have to do an hour of meditation and I
Mm.
have to do an hour of yoga. And I was like, no, like you can do your dishes and that can be your practice. You can
Hmm.
sit and do nothing. That can be your practice. Practices can be so many things.
Hmm.
So how do you personally define resilience?
Resilience would be getting up out of bed most days. Resilience would be not only caring for myself, but caring for the community around me. Resilience would be continuing to be open hearted when the world around you says that's not a good idea.
Mm.
Um, the active resilience, really, for me, I have really found that humor is my primary coping strategy. So, making people laugh, being with people in laughter, these are all acts of resilience for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I've laughed with you with your sense of humor. I love it.
Yeah, if someone doesn't laugh with me, I have a hard time trusting them. Like, it's funny. It's like, I'm like, so yeah, laughter is incredibly important to me.
Yeah, yeah. And then what is the opposite of resilience for you? And what are the first times that you're kind of being pulled in that direction?
Um, what does defeat look like? I've had it. So I don't know when this will air, but it was election night last night,
Mhm.
and I tried to get folks in my neighborhood to walk with me to a party for a candidate that I hoped was going to win and didn't win. And a lot of people were like, "I'm just too tired. I just can't do it." And like, I don't, we all hit those moments. What's funny is I ended up at the person I wanted to win didn't win, but I ended up at a different party of a candidate I didn't know, and that person did win. And a couple of my neighbors were there, but like it was so funny. I was like, I don't even know who this person is, and all of these people are happy. So yeah, there's a lot of moments where I just, I feel like I just can't possibly go on, and then like something happens to say like I guess I'll just keep going.
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
can be someone reaching out, that can be looking in my garden like right, I ripped out all my grass. I planted a meadow, and it's been amazing to watch. And currently the native sunflowers are like continuing to, new buds are coming up. I'm like,
Really?
yes, I'm like, flower children, like, more than me, when it's safe to blossom. But like i i think I think the time is done. So yeah, I have collapsed many, many times in my life, and yet I'm still here. So there's some kind of miracle in that.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think if you are collapsing, I think the most important thing is to tell someone, like, hey, I'm going down. That's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I would say to someone who's collapsing. I would say, that's okay. I bet you won't collapse forever. Maybe you will, but my hope is that you won't.
Yeah. 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 And even as you're talking it's and like even with the flower buds, it's like this
Mm,
cycle of like collapse, death, inwardness is also a part of resilience of like sometimes we have to collapse in order to like regather strength in order to bud again, because how much energy does it take to bud?
a lot.
Oh, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the number one thing that's wrong with the wellness culture that's out there, is just like, every day is a great day. And I'm like, every day's not a great day. Every many months, years that aren't great.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that like you're not a good person.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like everybody actually has to go through that. It does nothing
Hmm.
like a value judgment. It's like it's a natural cycle. Like the leaves every year they drop their leaves, or the trees every
Yeah.
year their leaves. But like somehow but there's this narrative that like we should never have that time of quiet or stillness or like collapse or despair or grief. And
Yeah.
it's supposed to keep going somehow.
And I say this to my clients all the time. It's very rarely represented in media or literature in a positive way. And the Mad Adam series, oh my God, by the woman that wrote Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood, there is a group of people that call it fallow, and they're kind of living in a collective society, and they fully respect the fallow time and just like understand it. I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting, because it's
Mhm.
so rare that you see any discussion where it's not just like, oh, the tragedy, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about hibernation and like the power of hibernation
Mm-hmm.
and how like there's this discernment between seasonal affective disorder and like clinical depression, and then like absolute need for just slow down. Like we don't have to be going so fast.
Mm-hmm.
We can retreat. And how can that be celebrated rather than like, oh, there's something wrong that I am too tired to go to the election party, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
want that thing, or whatever it is. Um, that it can be depression, but it also just can be a very normal, natural cycle.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how do you work with menopause, which is also like an
Mm.
interesting natural part of cycle, the
So
cycle
yeah.
life,
Can't run from that one.
right? If you live that long, you're lucky enough to go through
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And how does that relate
Uh,
to resilience for you and the narratives that we also get around
right.
menopause?
Yeah. So I'm in my second year of doing this presentation. It's been some of the most powerful to gather a group of people, mostly femme-bodied people, who have questions about menopause together. And every time someone asks a question, then I'm like, oh right, I haven't answered that. Like I gotta go research that one. Um, it is a time for folks who are going through it tend to want to collapse and pull away. And I have so many of my clients who say to me, like, I used to be very social and now I would like to see no one ever. And we give women so little space for that in our culture. And I think what's really interesting is I think women have always pulled out when they needed to, and they might have gotten shamed or at some point institutionalized. But now a lot of women are like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I did it. And I'd like to be by myself for a while. So giving people permission, honoring that, showing throughout history how that's, a room of one's own. There's all of these metaphors that show up. But yeah, it becomes a time where people can't deny these things any longer. Right. And I love the idea. I've heard it said so many ways, but as the brain starves for estrogen, as it loses its ability to function the way that it once did, this kind of new person emerges, who has different needs and different cycles and probably is resting more than they ever have or is less engaged or social in something. I saw the statistic that 70 17% of women leave the workforce during menopause.
Seven,
So 17, which is
17.
so almost 20%. So
Yeah.
almost one in five. And I'm like, I know why.
Wow.
Some of that's ageism in the workplace, but some of it is kind of opting out of capitalism, right? Like,
Mm,
just I can't do this anymore, and they don't care,
mhm.
which is different. Or my self-esteem doesn't need to do this activity to feel fulfilled anymore. There's a real change in personality, and honoring that, honoring the cycle of the crone. It's always interesting when I teach this workshop and I introduce the term crone to everybody. Often a percentage of the attendees won't know what that word is. I'm
Mm.
like, oh, well, how are female elders honored in your culture? And oftentimes people are like, if they grew up in America, they're like, they're not. They're dumped to the side, like unless I hate to bash on Paris Hilton, but I always bring her up. Like, there's this idea that if you can stay like rail thin and still look like you did in your 20s, you're valid.
Mhm.
Um, but I think, if your body changed radically, if your voice changed, if your behavior changed, you're still valid. You
Mm.
still have so much to offer us. I mean, I also say our society doesn't run without postmenopausal women. It just doesn't. If
Yep.
people would be shocked if you removed all the postmenopausal women and they just stopped doing whatever they were doing. So many systems would collapse.
Mm. I have never thought about it in that way, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about who does all of this unpaid labor, all of this stuff,
Yeah.
and paid, but often unpaid, just like gets it all done for everyone else to enjoy.
Right. Right. Yeah. And in your work with people who are either going through the transition, they're in perimenopause or they are in menopause, like how do you support them to go through that transition of accepting their cronehood and
Mm,
the changes in personality and that kind of pretty drastic change from like I've been social and now I'm like I have no fucks to give. I just don't even care anymore because that can be jarring internally.
Yeah.
You've lived in one modality or one
Oh
like
yeah. And
area.
jarring for the family. I mean, that's the thing. I hear so many people now say like, "Oh, my mother just apologized for who she was as a teenager. I have to go apologize to my kid or my spouse. Like, I'm just different now."
Yeah.
So it's a lot of just honoring who you were and maybe grieving that loss. Maybe there was a lot of societal praise for being that way. And there's a lot of anxiety about changing and will I be accepted and will I, still be considered all kinds of things. I mean, there's so much pressure in a culture to bear children. So like the idea that like, well, that's gone. Like
Mm.
that's something you can no longer do. Or maybe it's not a single piece like that, but just giving people so much permission to talk and grieve and bring in here the way that they're talking and grieving and what hurts and what systems are failing and what are they trying hormone replacement therapy, what's working, what's not working, have they slept ever in the last 10 years, like I mean, like I have a couple friends that were on the 4:30 a.m. text club just to say like I'm up, just so like someone knows that once again I have not slept through the night and I'm like heavily medicated and I still am often up at 4:30 in the morning.
Mm.
And I think some of it I do through modeling of just being like, so I'm an Ashkenazi Jewish woman. I learned in doing my research that perimenopause could last up to 15 years for Ashkenazi women. And I was like, oh, that's my story. Like, I remember trying to get my hormones tested at 39 and being told, like, what every single woman on the planet gets told, like, you're fine, everything's fine.
Mm.
But I could tell something was off. And then in postmenopause, like every system went out. I became diabetic. My blood pressure was at 165. Like, it's just like I needed so much medical care and I'm on so many medications to, be functional at this point. But, that's a lot. Like when every system goes out at once, or for a lot of people, it's a slow, they're like, huh, all my hair is falling out. Like, like these, like all of these things are kind of falling away. And so, yeah, it's a lot. I would just say it's a lot of openness to discussions, and especially like around women in pain, women being denied adequate medical care.
Mm.
Um, I have noticed a shift just in the last year with the first time I went on HRT, like I brought in a dossier of information to my doctor and they were like, huh, okay, let's try it. And this time I went in and I was like, I think I need to make some changes. And my doctor asked me what symptoms I had and didn't even check my levels. And I was like, this is huge that they're thinking that way now, because that's actually what matters. It's actually an issue of symptoms. Like what your levels are is different for every person and different for all of through the month.
Right, right. Yeah, I was reading, this is more about uh bleeding women, but I don't know if you ever read This Is Your Brain on Birth Control.
Mm-mm.
But she was talking about how it's so hard to do research on women's bodies
Mm-hmm.
because you're essentially you have like different women each. You have like the the bleeding woman, the luteal woman, the follicular woman, the ovulating woman, and like each if you did a research thing on each of the each person that same person in each part of their cycle, you would get a different result.
Yeah. I mean, the study I want to see, I don't know who would fund this, especially in this time. I want to see the study where folks get tested like for 365 days, like
Mhm.
what their levels are at. That's the study I want to see.
Mm.
It'll probably never happen, but I think like from everything that I've learned about people, that's the data that's interesting. And that's not how we view bodies, right? It's like, oh, this single moment will tell me enough. And I guess that's the benefit of being someone's weekly therapist. It's like, you're meeting them over and over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then I'm also like, as you're talking, I'm thinking about kind of like two different, well, maybe even more, like different kinds of resilience, like the physical resilience, and when our systems are starting to shut down or we're having different physical symptoms of whether it's hot flashes or brain fog or hair falling out, and then other systems might be impacted. But then there's also this kind of emotional resilience that comes forward that is what I have seen even in my own mom of like, I just don't care anymore.
Mhm.
Like this, it was like she cared so much less. And I don't know if she related it to menopause or not. I don't think
Mhm.
she did. She never said that to me if she did. But just seeing maybe her physicality having less resilience, but her emotional resilience actually like blossoming in a way. And I don't know if you've seen that or how you work with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think letting folks know, like, you're about to be the coolest person you've ever been. And there's all this stuff coming out, like, there's a Menopause movie coming out of all of those punk women, their experience. So when I look at the older women that I admire most, they speak so honestly.
Mm,
You know, I mean, Jane Goodall's passing is like an amazing example. Like, there was someone who just told the truth to the very end.
yeah.
So yeah, I would say that as this one identity leaves, you get to step into this other identity, and it's pretty sweet. I mean, I think that the women that I see that really embrace it really step into their own power in a super profound way.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah. And I like it makes me also think about like internalized ageism and
Hmm.
how difficult that might be if the narrative you've been told for your whole life, internally and externally, is be rail thin and look this particular way, and then to inevitably move into an aging process, which happens from the moment that we're born. But how do you work with when people are feel that struggle with aging or not having their cycle anymore? I mean, there's something about I'm in perimenopause, but there's something about the cycle that is so familiar
Yeah,
that
you've done
I
it your
talked about
whole
the grief process of like,
right.
what is
Like
it going to be like?
since you were an early teenager or maybe earlier, this has been part of your life.
Yeah.
And now it's not there anymore. And like, what signals get sent to tell you where you are? And all of a sudden, you're on this kind of fresh slate.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a lot of pieces about identity, slowing down, grieving, what's really gone. I mean, what's so interesting and so much of the advertising to, I don't know if you're on social media at all, or the algorithm of just like, get rid of that menopause belly. Look the way you always did. And you know, look the way you're going to look now. It's like an interesting message.
Right.
So the exercise that I do first in my menopause workshop is I have them write down how they feel in their body right now, and then in another column how they would like to feel.
Mm.
And then someone always asks, where do you start in your work? And I'll say to people, you know, the exercise that we just did about your body, has anyone ever done anything like that with their clients? And the majority of the people will say no. And I'm like, oh, there's an excellent place to start with yourself or with your clients. How does this body feel? I mean, we really don't give ourselves any time to ask those questions. And yet this is what we're in all the time. This is what we're left with at the end of the day, right? So to get to know this and how this works and what this needs, um, and you know, how does your system run best? Um, you know, it runs. I talk with a lot of folks about like how my weekends I can do maybe one thing a day, maybe two,
Hmm.
but like I can't do more than that. And that's just how I run. And it's ended some friendships, you know, because people are like, you're not as fun as you once were. And I'm like, yeah. And that's only gonna get worse.
Mm.
Like I'm not as fun. That's okay. That was fun back then, but like I'm not that fun anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I will say we haven't really talked about it, but I do a lot of stuff with tarot.
Mm.
And like I it's there is a connection to my intuition. It's got to be connected to this. That it's like it's just kind of it's much louder. I can't deny it anymore. People have seen it now in person and they're like, that was trippy. And I was like, yeah, that was trippy for me too. But, so there's something happening of like letting go of standards about how we behave and what we do. And just kind of walking truly into that like crony, witchy woman at the edge of the village who's always existed in every culture.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm over there now. My client and I, not my client, my neighbor who has chickens, and she's an amazing green thumb. Like she just grew like one of the pumpkins that she grew in her own yard was 78 pounds this year. Like she's just like she has the skill. And we talk about like in the apocalypse what will happen. And I'm like, Jen, you'll be so useful because like you can grow food. And I'm like, all I'll have is the tarot. And she's like, I don't know. I think people are gonna need it then. I'm like, okay. Because that's what I got.
Absolutely. And all skills are needed in the
Right.
apocalypse.
We're gonna need the 78-pound pumpkins. We'll also need my tarot skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The intuition that comes from it, the creativity. Absolutely. So I'm curious, how do you work with women or femme bodies going through this process with art or with
Hmm.
sounds like that's how you start sessions with like somatic work, but also with sex therapy. How does that
Hmm.
that's also like a common narrative of like you're dry and your sex drive is down and you don't have interest in sex anymore, which may be true, but maybe not true for everybody. And what does sex therapy look like in menopause?
It's there's a lot to talk about lube, which is great. At
Mhm.
my menopause workshop, when it's in person, I'll have some lubes out, and it's fun to get someone to volunteer to test them all with their fingers, obviously, but like telling people like, oh, this one's sticky, or I don't like this one. So yeah, but I have my watercolor supplies out now. I'm doing that with clients all week. And it's really interesting to do these like mediums that just kind of offer release. And so I have really mid quality watercolor paper. Crucial. Don't do this on photocopy paper. You won't have the same experience.
Mm.
There's very expensive watercolor paper, which I'm not using in the office. But then we just use a big brush and we wet the page. We wet the whole page. And then they pick up pigment and they just like mush it around. And it gets really like effusive. And then maybe they have to use salt to contain some of the water, or maybe they use a paper towel to blot it some of it up. And then we do another layer and another layer. And there's just this sense of like entering into this dreamy space. That you kind of get to build up and erase things. I mean, that's always the fun for me about the expressive arts is it's a place where you can play with that. I made a mistake and I can fix it in the session. Whereas in real life, sometimes it just feels like I made a mistake and now I have to suffer forever. Um, yeah, so I try and keep things open but provocative and interesting. I just did Day of the Dead art with everyone, a collage making experience with images from that and images from all over the world about death and change and growth, to just acknowledge that space of grieving. Pretty much anything that has to do with grief in here, especially with sex therapy, there tends to be so much work around shame and grief that just having someone that you can share those feelings with is, I'm learning, tends to be a ton of the work because
Yeah,
people don't have anyone else to tell this stuff to.
right. Yeah, so true. Yeah. Also, again, there's a lot of, I think a lot of, I know I certainly, it was not part of my family culture. Like, let's talk about let's talk about periods.
Hmm.
Let's talk about sex. Like it wasn't part of, yeah, a lot of my experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the one of the things we start off the menopause workshop is I'll ask, who taught you anything or who gave you any messages about what menopause is? And often people say, I heard from the men in my family that menopause was bad and it made their wife bad. And they, we will all be bad when we enter into menopause.
Mhm.
So just looking, and if that's the only message you got, otherwise than that, you heard nothing.
Right.
I mean, in my sex therapy training, 90 hours, we spent 12 minutes on menopause. Like, and
Wow.
that's not, I mean, never in my graduate program did we ever talk about menopause.
Nope.
I've heard in medical school, like you get an hour, maybe if you're an OBGYN, you get 12 hours. Like, no one knows unless you've got it in your mind that it's your time to make this something you're going to learn about. It's not handed to you.
Hmm.
You got to go looking.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So do you have elders in your life that you
Yes.
do?
Yes. I'm so blessed.
Hmm.
So I have a weekly call with my 77-year-old aunt. She's very active and we talk about everything.
Mm.
I have an elder who's passed, who's always present in my mind. My neighbor Pat died, oosh, maybe 10 plus years ago on the third round of breast cancer. And her picture's up at my desk, and I'm conferring with her often. Yeah, and then as a therapist, I don't know if this is your experience, but like the people I trained with, the people who trained me
Hmm.
were often much, much older than me.
Yep.
And I'm very much lucky to be in touch still with a lot of those people. And then a lot of those people have passed, and all of a sudden I'm the elder, and I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a weird that even to say that I've been doing therapy for 20 years has been like when did that happen?
Yeah,
It's weird.
yeah,
We could have a whole conversation about time.
right. I know. I've been at this for
Years of the
25 years. I'm like, I've literally spent my entire adult professional life doing one thing. Like, what? How did that happen?
yeah, yeah. And yet always being on the edge of some new creativity and new like doing the menopause, doing tarot, and now going into sex therapy. It's like you've done the same thing, but you never have as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is one field where you can like grow and change a lot. And I wanted to be a sex therapist at the beginning,
Mm.
and it just didn't work out.
Hmm.
So it's funny to finally get to do that dream.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I feel like, especially the names and some of the training techniques that come up in the sex therapy training. Like, oh, I learned this 30 years ago when I was out in the street doing HIV/AIDS education. This is
Mhm.
the model that we used
Wow.
in the 90s. Like, this is so weird that it's like now the canon of sex therapy.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I had this, so I had this funny experience. You know who Kate Bornstein is? Talk about elder.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, the trans writer, like the first person that became famous that I know for writing about being trans. And their long-term partner was Barbara Corrales. And when I was getting into ordering books for this workshop I've got coming up called Tarot and the Erotic, I stopped seeing the authors and I just started ordering by titles. So all of this stuff is showing up. And this book arrived called Urban Tantra, and it was by Barbara Corrales, who's Kate Bornstein's long-term partner. And I just felt like my whole life had like boop, like gone in this big loop of like, oh, I'm going back to those people that I used to like think about all the time. And anyways, it's just really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it goes back to the beginning of our conversation, talking about cycles and
Hmm.
cycles keep happening. Yeah. So, do you have a practice that you would like to share for anybody that has either is experienced any part of their cycle,
Hmm.
macro or micro, or?
I'll just share the tarot version of this that I do. So the card that I find speaks to most women who feel like they have no female role models is the first really gendered card in the deck. It's the Empress.
Mm.
And it speaks to that universal mother archetype. So few people grew up in a culture that taught them that there was a universal mother goddess that cared about them.
Mm.
And I'll have them make an Empress collage, focusing on what are the aspects of the sacred feminine you'd like to hold in your life. And it's super powerful. If you don't have that to resonate against, finding it in yourself or finding it externally is super powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you help people like find that sacred divine feminine?
Mhm.
Because especially if we haven't grown up with it, it can
Yeah.
like,
I
oh,
would
that's
just start,
cool.
so it was interesting. The client that I use as a clinical example when I teach this, we did a lot of guided meditations, and she often in the meditations ended up at the stream behind her house where she grew up, and there was all of these animals there. And I was like, this is so pagan. And that was not the spiritual practice that she grew up in. But I was like, the fact that as young children we like go and lie down in nature and like look at worms and frogs and watch birds and think about things, like that is an early connection to nature based power, religion, whatever you want to look at it. So I encourage people to find animal images that represent that sacred feminine, right? Like mama bear is always such an interesting
Oh yeah,
example,
sense.
or like the wise old owl, or there's a way in which animals are allowed to be like powerfully gendered that humans are not. Do a little research on the goddesses from your culture because there are some.
Mm-hmm.
Every culture has them.
Mm-hmm.
And start to pull from those images. I mean, we live such in an interesting world of the internet. Like you can go find it. You don't have to find a magazine image of it. You could probably just print something off the internet and start to kind of collect those images and a goddess vision board, if you might
Vision board.
say.
That's beautiful. I love it. Well, if anybody's watching this afterwards and you want to
Yeah, go make a goddess vision
put your
board.
vision board in the comments, we would love to see it. It'd be so fun. Maybe I'll do one and I'll post it there as well.
Yeah, I'd love to see yours. I've
Yeah.
got like 500. I can post. My bodega collage is my favorite. She's so badass.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything you have coming up that you want people to know about?
Yeah. So February 15th in Tacoma, I'll be leading a tarot and neurotic 6 CEU presentation. It meets the sex therapy credits because Live Love Well is producing it. My next open menopause training is in February. This one in November sold out, which is pretty like
Congratulations.
speaks of the time that we're in. I've got a new online presentation coming up in June. I'll do just the major arcana in therapy. We'll focus just on that.
Okay.
If people like me, they can find me on Instagram at rtext, or I'm reading tarot cards once a month. Me and a drag queen, Sylvia Ostafermore, very famous, established, amazing queen in Seattle, who's Mormon, lapsed Mormon. We read tarot cards for the same person. She from her deck, me from my deck, and it's on her YouTube channel, and they're just great. It's just like if you need to like laugh and feel loved by somebody, go check those out. They're just really, really good.
That's awesome. That's great. So I'll put all those links
Yes,
in the description so you can find
great.
them. And I just want to thank you so much. This is such a
Thanks for doing this.
beautiful and fun and lovely way to experience just a little bit of the counter of the narratives that a lot of people are getting around what menopause is or what it will be like. And I really appreciated your like perspective shift of like a fresh slate.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, that can come with grief and loss but it's also like you're stepping into this new powerful person. And
Yeah.
that's that's like really inspiring versus, oh no, it's coming. What's going to happen? Um, so I love that perspective for myself. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Well, thanks for doing this. This is a
Oh,
great project.
great.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.